Hello and welcome back to Absurdity. My name is Ryan Becker and I am joined by my lovely, elegant, and graceful co-host, Henry Johnson. There's no specific reason why I chose those three words other than I felt like they worked well together.
Well,
Henry,
thank you. I figured, what a way to make me feel even more self-conscious about the fact that I've been cleaning for like the last several hours, haven't shaved, and I'm a complete wreck.
yeah, that sounds about
But I might
well.
still have my curls that everybody was liking. They're like, "What do you put in your hair?"
Hey, that and you can still walk. So let's be happy about that
for
too.
For at least another week.
Out of the two of us, you can walk better than I can, and there's a specific reason I say that. But hey, if you're new here, we talk about all things absurd in religion, culture, and society. And we both, as people in ministry, Henry is currently a full-time pastor, myself as a ministry leader, and a obviously podcast host. This kind of serves as another ministry for me, and I used to pastor full-time as well. For the both of us, this serves as an opportunity for us to hopefully have much-needed conversations, use whatever platform, however big or however small, to amplify and build up others and amplify the voices of others as well. So hope that you enjoy this conversation. And this episode is going to be a little bit shorter today by about half. It's going to be 30 minutes. And that is because this week I had a re-flare-up of my old back injury. And from Tuesday to today, I'm much better than I was. But on Tuesday, I have been bedridden and am on bed rest for the next probably 4 or 5 days while my nerves and back muscles calm down. And so I'm very limited in how much sitting I can do without being in excruciating pain. And so we've got to be quick about things, but I just wanted to give you guys the update, and that's why Henry can currently walk better than I can. I almost blacked out twice on Tuesday trying to get up just to use the restroom, and the restroom's like 5 feet from my bed. It was one of the worst experiences I have ever been through, and from like a pain perspective, and it still hurts a lot. Getting out of bed is a chore. But we didn't want to put off recording, and obviously Henry's taking a trip for the next 3 months, so we won't be able to record for the rest of October.
3 weeks, not 3
Did
months.
I say 3 months?
You said pain. 3 months.
It's the pain. 3 weeks.
My friend, this isn't basic. This is jump school.
3 weeks. You're going to jump school for 3. I don't know why I said 3 months. I think in my heart, it feels like you're going to be gone for 3 months. I think that's what's happening.
You and my wife both are like, I don't want you to go. I'm like, well, it's tough. You want me in jail if I don't? So,
yes.
Yeah.
No. So we're talking about something interesting today that has been making waves, but it's making, I think, now even more waves now that a vote has gone through. But basically, we are talking about
did the vote go through now? That's new information for me because
so the vote to authorize a strike.
Oh, okay. I thought this was in response to this morning that they were making progress on the talks. Okay.
No. So basically, there has been a brewing controversy within Hollywood and especially within crew members for increasing mistreatment or traditional mistreatment of crew members, abuse from crew members, aimed at crew members, and the sacrifices that they have to make just to basically do grunt work is between them and movie producers, movie studios, and anyone who's around assigning them to sets. This has turned into a massive thing with an Instagram that popped up called IA_stories, IA stories. And IA stories is basically anonymous stories that were shared via DM of people on, crew members and some of the horrible things they've experienced. This thing ballooned pretty quickly. It has almost 150,000 followers at the time that we're recording this. And some of these stories are harrowing. One person whose daughter committed suicide, and he couldn't tell anyone. He had just gotten home from like a 16-hour day, barely got any sleep, had to make sure his daughter got to a hospital, and then would have to frequently text or call the hospital on his bathroom breaks just to get updates. And just things like that of regular crew members being denied lunch on set, being denied proper lunch breaks, or being asked to work 16 to 20 hour days and then not know where you're going to be in the next 4 hours when you wake up. It's just a whole nightmare of things. This eventually led to, during talks between the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, or the IATSE, or IA for short, and the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers, AMPTP. They were talking and in talks, because let's see, where do I have those notes for what they specifically wanted?
Well, they want longer turnarounds. Yeah, okay, you're going to get to that.
Yep, I got it. So, they wanted a $400 million deficit in pension funded. They wanted better health and without imposing premiums or increasing the cost of health coverage. They wanted longer rest periods, 10-hour turnarounds instead of 4 to 8, and wage increases. And this basically talks were halted, and the IA, 90% of the votes, when they cast a vote, the IA is a union, a worker union. 90% of eligible members cast online votes last weekend, and 99% of the votes were in favor of a strike. This means that they have now authorized a strike, and they have that on the negotiating table as, if you don't work with us, then we will go on strike.
We won't work with you. Yeah.
Correct. That's essentially what that gives them the space to do. And so it's a huge bargaining chip on the table. And this is different from the writers' strike back in 2007. I remember that. I used to be really into Late Night with Conan O'Brien. And I remember the Colbert Report and Daily Show. Those were all suffering from this. But when the writers' strike in 2007 happened, studios were able to use scripts, or they had their own, they had other people writing. But if the IA walks out, production just doesn't happen. Everything halts, because what are you going to do if you don't have someone to run a camera or run a focus or I can't remember what the term is, but tracking the focus. Boom. What do you do without lighting? What do you do without a boom? Yeah. What do you do without all of these different set designers? What do you do with all of the people that actually make a Hollywood set run? So this is pretty massive.
People don't realize just how many people are involved in a production. I mean, there are massive. Hundreds and hundreds on a set. So,
well, if you've seen any Marvel movie, you know, because you've sat through all of the credits, and you can just see all of the names that you'd never pay attention to unless they sound or look funny. And but you really don't get a sense for it until, at least I didn't get a better sense or appreciation for it really until I started thinking about this story and started thinking about just how many people would end up walking away for the sets, for a set to shut down. That's just crazy to me, the amount of people, or the number of people that would be involved. So yeah, this is a huge story that's breaking right now, just with the threat of the strike. I know that talks seem to be going better this morning, but this is October 8th that we're recording this. So if there are any updates after, we're not aware of them. But we also know that costs associated with COVID-19 safety protocols can expand a project's budget by as much as 20%. And so there's a lot of reasons why movie producers and the AMPTP doesn't want to give into some of these things, because it's going to cost them a lot of money, and they're already having to spend a lot more money on health and safety, provisions and protections on set. So,
well, like so many things, time is money, which is where a lot of the abuse actually came in to start with.
Yeah, absolutely. And unfortunately, with Hollywood being so, this is one of those things that, in my opinion, we see happen a lot in the corporate world, or just, in regular workforce worlds, where the pressure to keep your job and the pressure to be successful in your chosen field or career is so much that you start, you either failed to set boundaries at the start, or you start overworking and start doing more and more and more, because you can't afford to lose the job. So you can't say no, or this is a huge opportunity. You can't say no.
And to that huge opportunity thing, I think when it comes to the television movie industry, you have an additional psychological pressure already, because our pop culture, our idea is, I'm working for a movie, I'm working for a television. There's a chance, if I'm really good at this, I might be somebody, or I might become known, or I might get a chance on screen as an extra, and not just, maybe even a line extra, and make that shift. So there's that almost, an additional pressure, not just keep my job, not just do well, but the movie industry as a whole is a very fascinating thing to be in, because no matter what you tell yourself, that almost toxicity of pride, of attention, of value, all creates a cocktail around that you just almost abandon yourself in its pursuit, and you will abuse yourself. And then if you abuse yourself, others will easily take advantage and abuse you.
Yeah. And this is when you've got 60% of Americans on living paycheck to paycheck, they don't have $1,000 in their savings. What ability do you have to say no? For me, I'm trapped because I have great health insurance and I have a lot of health problems. Like today, there's not a lot I can say no to other than that's protected by law, because I need the health insurance. That's just me being honest. And it's not that employers I think a lot of bosses and employers know this and do whatever they want with that information. I think others don't realize that that's what's happening. And so they just keep asking for you to do something, and then you just keep saying yes. And no one really understands what's going on other than, you just think, why does my boss keep asking me to do more and more? And there's this kind of rule in unwritten or unspoken rule of the, only do what you're asked, don't do more than you're asked, because the next time, now that's the standard. Whatever the extra work you did that's now the standard and what's going to be expected of you in the future. So if you overperform too much, then all of a sudden that's the new baseline, and you have to keep increasing your work output just to maintain the level of expectations that are placed upon you now by those that you work for. So it's a whole vicious cycle of worker abuse, and some of it comes from us as workers doing more and more and saying yes and not saying no, and not knowing what we're allowed and what we can say no to. And then others are by bosses in companies who obviously have to keep their first priorities to their shareholders and to keeping the institution or the organization running. So why would they tell you do less work? Why would that ever happen? Unless the boss just cares about you specifically. It's just very rare that a company goes, hey, you know what? Everyone should work less.
Yeah. That's definitely something that's never happened at Amazon.
No, never. Which is funny because studies have shown that like a 4-day work week actually gives everyone or makes everyone more productive. There's a lot of shifts, a lot of shifting conversation to more and more support for a shorter work week, and not 4 10-hour days. I'm talking about 4 8-hour days, which I think there was a study done that showed that like 6 out of an 8-hour workday, only 2 of those hours are actually done, or productive work is being done. The other 6 hours are them pretending to work or doing less productive work. And that's talk about waste. That's waste. So,
yeah.
Well, anyway, so Henry, you actually have some movie set experience, and I'd love to hear from you. I say this knowing that it's limited, and I wouldn't necessarily claim you an expert in this, but I'd love to hear your experience being on a film set of kind of what you saw. And maybe you were on a better one. I don't actually know because I haven't heard anything from this side of the conversation. So yeah, go ahead and share, because I'm interested to hear.
Yeah, for sure. Well, first of all, as I said, I am not an expert in the field. I would not say, man, I've worked in Hollywood for a good long while. My experience is limited, but to me, it was very exciting and very eye-opening. For those of you, shameless plug, because I'm really proud of the project. For those of you who've ever heard of the 24th movie, okay, so we had the 24th movie. You can find it on all of your different streaming services. You can download it. It was produced in 2020, so just before COVID hit. So you can imagine it was supposed to be coming out in like February of 2021 for Black History Month. They were trying to target that way because it was the same Oscar-winning director of Black Klansman and different things like that. And of course, COVID hit, so it ended up not going into the theaters because theaters were shut down and yada, 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 and then eventually went direct to streaming and that kind of thing. But still a fantastic movie if you haven't seen it. Very historical. Anyway, the whole reason I got involved, the only reason you would be like, well, why in the world is Henry doing anything on a film set? Is because it just so happened the movie is set in the year 1917, which is right about the time America is entering something called the Great War. We now know it as the First World War. And why that is important for this story is simply that World War I tends to be an area that I spend a lot of time researching, collecting, reenacting. I do a lot of stuff in this era, and it's not a very common era for people to be really in-depth researched in our understanding of some things. And I just know a lot of people. And so this movie is set in the historical time frame of an all-black unit that's been drafted into the Army, and they're sent to train in the segregated South in Houston, Texas. And there was a lot of historical animosity and problems that happened between an all-black military unit and an all-white police force in segregated Houston, Texas. So you can already imagine what this kind of movie would be about. And it led to actually one of the worst massacres in American history, where there was an uprising of these soldiers after being oppressed by the white police force, and it led to several deaths, and then the largest military trial in American history and the execution of over 60 of these guys. Wow. Not the police officers, but the black soldiers. So anyway, if you don't know what I'm talking about, go watch this movie. They do actually a very good job at trying to give you the basic understanding of the history, although to be fair, from history, the love story they add in this is not true. But go figure, it's Hollywood. They're like, you need a love story.
There's got to be something.
Yeah. It's a great. It's a great love story for what it is. The main actor is Trey Byers from Boardwalk Empire. If anyone knows who that is, great guy, very talented actor. But anyway, this is a real lead up to the point in this. They needed some technical advisors for the historical piece. And in Hollywood, the big eras where you get a lot of military advising and a lot of historical knowledge is World War II, which is kind of like Hollywood's bread and butter for war films and action, that kind of thing, and Vietnam. Okay, those are really the two eras. And now they're starting to put a lot of emphasis on getting a lot of technical advisors and a lot of military advisors for the sandbox, for what we call Afghanistan, Iraq, those conflicts. Some movies are starting to come out in that a lot more, because it's a way for America to try and come to terms with what that 20 years of experience has been.
Yep.
But anyway, there's not really a lot in World War I, and it just so happened that the military advisor for this film knew me. And like so many things in life, it's who you know. And because he knew me, and he knew that World War I is a limited era, and he'd worked with me on not movie projects, and he knew this, he arranged for me to get an interview with the executive producer of the film before they went to filming. And I didn't know that's what it was. And basically, long story short, they hired me as an assistant technical advisor to deal with the historical accuracy of the film, and the actors and the actresses and all that when it came to the military aspects of World War I.
And you even have an IMDb now. So I'm going to put a link to all of this, by the way, in the show notes. Yeah. I forgot to, honestly, and I just did. And there you are. Henry Johnson,
yes, I have an IMDb. Advisor. I have made it in life, right, on this actual Hollywood film. But anyway, so that's my experience. I spent 2 months on set while trying to work a day job too. So I feel really sorry for these people that it is their day job, because it was almost impossible. And if I didn't work a job that I could be really flexible with my hours, and at that time I was not full-time in a church for ministry, so it gave me a lot more flexibility. But they were filming this movie, and I got hired, and so I was a technical advisor. Now, I say that to also say there's kind of, my observation, this could be true or not, there's kind of a ranking system in positions on a movie set. And I was given a whole lot more flexibility, and I do believe a lot better treatment than the majority of people that would be on set. I'm just going to preface it by saying that. In my limited experience, I could definitely see that, because part of my role was I had the ability to go straight to the director or the assistant director and interrupt or make a comment at certain, not interrupt like if they're in the middle of filming, but I had access to the head honchos, okay? I was around the producers.
Mm-hmm.
I was expected to be certain places on set. For a regular boom mic or sound effects guy or, makeup artist or hairstylists or whatever, they don't get all of that, right? And they also have a different setup as far as where they go to eat, what kind of food they have set up, because there are perks. I did realize it is kind of like a hierarchy. There are better perks the further up you go. And the lower you go, the less perks there are. Right. But even in that environment, admitting that I was probably in a much more cushy, well, not probably, I was in a much more cushy job on set than a lot of the people I was around. I can see how even through my experience, it would be really easy to be burned out, abused, and just wasted on set just because of the grueling nature of how these things are put together. And I would go so far as to say, this might be a topic to come back to near the end, I really think almost just like sports, Hollywood is another one of those areas where people behind the scenes are being abused for our entertainment, and we don't really give a flying fig because of our voracious appetite for media, especially after COVID, right? Because to you, you want Netflix to work, you want Hulu to work, you want Amazon Prime to, you just want to click and devour media. And that 40 minutes to an hour and a half thing you're watching, whether it's a television show or something else, to you, that's 40 minutes. I need more, more, more. That took, for TV, it's usually like 3 to 4 week shoots at minimum, up to 8 when you're blusting through that. And movies can take 2 to 3 months. At least. That's not the big blockbuster movies, right? So there is a lot of people that sacrificed a whole lot more than the 40 minutes to an hour and a half you're watching. And I think there's a drive by producers and all that to further take advantage of people because they need to keep up with those of us demanding it. And I think some of this isn't going to change until it's not just unions demanding change, but the people consuming what the unions are producing that demand change, which is kind of why we're talking about it. But it was many times on the 2 months I was on set that you would have lunch scheduled at a certain time, and they would blow right through it by a couple hours. Because there was something that needed to be filmed, and you go, well, why can't they just take a break? You have to understand the amount of moving pieces that have to come together to get a couple takes of one thing, right? And there's lighting considerations if it's outdoor filming, or there's even indoor filming, and how do they need to backlight this thing or whatnot. There is noise factors. If you're filming somewhere, they might have shut down entire blocks of a city to film something. Mm-hmm. And they have a narrow window in which they can film this thing before all the countless tens of thousands of dollars they paid to city and the police department on staff and whatever to shut it down, right? And they've had to go out, and if it's a paved road, they had to cover it with dirt because in 1917, you don't have pavement, right? I've seen these kinds of things. They have to go in and take out everything that looks wrong. And then you have to reinstall it and put the traffic lights back in or whatever in time for actual people to go in rush hour through there. Right? Or you're filming all night. So there's this big pressure, and I can see where they can go, well, you have to understand, we're not trying to abuse you, but we got to get such and such and such done.
Yeah.
And I could see where you could easily not only get delayed with lunch, but just skip it because you might break on one part of the set. But some of these, well, not a lot of productions, like even the one I was on, you have multiple sets running. Okay. You have A team, B team, right? And they're setting up for stuff, and the director's hopping between sets.
Yeah.
Right? He finishes what he wants on one, and then he goes to the next one. Well, who cares if it's lunch hour? If this is the time your Oscar-winning director can show up on set and film, he is God on a movie set.
Yep.
Okay? I like to say there are two people that are God on a movie set. Okay? That is the director, and then it is the financer. Okay, so whatever studio rep is funding this $100 million, $200 million, that's the big blockbusters, but even $40, $50, $60 million. Okay, so to be fair, the movie set I was on, I think they had a budget somewhere within 40 to 50 million, which is just astronomical amounts of money to even think about.
And
being
that's
on
not
set,
even,
and that's flying.
And that's not even the normal, that might be the normal, but that's not the highest by any stretch of the imagination.
But by any stretch, this was considered like decent, but cheap for a studio to pump.
Yep.
I mean, they could have 8 or 9 $40 to $50 million films going at any time. Right. That's just, but so those two people dictate everything. And so I saw many a time where lunch breaks, forget it. And I was on the higher end of the thing, and I would swing in and grab a sandwich and go out. And the food was great. I do want to say that at least what I had access to, the food was a nice perk if I had time to sit down and eat it. Okay. I mean, they would import guys that the culinary unions, they can do their stuff. Okay. But you'd run through that. You're on time pressures because of extras. Don't even get me started on extras that have to pay into the union, but they're not really unionized. And they really get chewed up for low money and the promise of, I might be on screen. Right. And the time pressures. And again, weekends you don't film, which on paper sounds great. You're like, cool, I get the weekend off. Well, you better believe, and I think this is actually part of the challenge that the unions have brought right now with turnaround times. It's not just they want a 10-hour turnaround instead of an 8. Okay, and what that means is you get a turnaround means how long can you be offset before they expect you back?
Yep.
right? So if they say 8 hours, it's not you go get 8 hours of sleep. It means you have 8 hours from the mind they go cut, break, to come back. Well, what if it takes you 40 minutes to put everything away, get in your car, and leave?
Good luck.
Tough. That's in your countdown, right? So if it takes you an hour and a half to get to the hotel or wherever, and then it's going to take you an hour and a half to get back and set up, you got like 5 hours of sleep, baby.
Yep.
If that's what you choose to do.
And this is where I think the conversation is really important to have. I'm hoping that we see some really positive changes coming for the workforce crew. And really, honestly, so links to everything, the 24th, Henry's IMDb, which only has 1 credit, and it's amazing. We got to get you a photo on there, man.
Because I don't think about that,
Yeah, I know.
Like, man, you need to put it in and work on more movies. And I'm like, the likelihood of me getting asked to work on more movies is...
if they're World War I themed. So...
Yes, and how many of those have come out?
But I'm putting the IA Stories one on there too. Some of these are sobering. And I would encourage you to take a look. And I think for all of us, I think it's a reminder for us to make sure that we have good work-life boundaries and to strengthen the ones that we have to make sure, that we're enforcing them appropriately and understanding what is too far. There's also a rule, an unwritten rule of like, if you work too hard and if you work so hard that you're irreplaceable, it also means that you will never get promoted because you are irreplaceable. They need you in that position because you are the best and there's no one else for it, and anyone else would do way worse. And so you have to do enough. But at the end of the day, these movies, these companies, these corporations that your company that you work for or the school that you go to, all of these organizations are going to keep on going long after you. And their first responsibility is to do what it takes to keep themselves running. And you get lucky if you find a boss or manager that cares about you beyond that. But the reality is, a lot of us are slaving away, giving away our lives and giving away what we're passionate about to companies and people that don't really care about us. And I think this is a powerful reminder to make sure that we love what we're doing, or try our best to find something that we love doing, understanding that sometimes you have to do something you don't love so that you can eventually, or so that you can fund doing something that you do love. But I think this is a very, very powerful reminder for all of us to keep that in mind, and to employers to pay attention to the stories that your employees and the people under you are living, and pay attention to the ways that, man, there are some times where I just feel like if I could just tape my job description to a door and just let them see it, or blow it up in a big billboard of like, this is what I've agreed to do for you, then I would. It's just, these are the kinds of things that we need to be better about. And if you don't have a copy of your job description, you should 100% get that ASAP. But that's really what I kind of wanted to walk away with today, was so that people could have some empathy for this. And I want to talk about something that was going on right now and current, but also B, so that we can take something meaningful back with us as well into our own lives. So yeah, Henry, as we kind of draw to a close here, any final thoughts that you want to leave us with?
The point I was going to say is, especially as Christians, and something I want us to walk away is not only think about this, because I know it's so easy, especially, let's be honest, especially when you hear Hollywood in any sentence, you go, those entitled, stuck up, liberal, whatever. We have a tendency to think cushy. They've got everything handed to them on a silver platter, so why should I feel sorry for them, all screaming like, I need better benefits? And you're like, yeah, sure. Okay, that's because what you think about is the red carpet scene and all the big actors. Okay, you're not thinking about the army of people underneath them that are like nobodies that get that big name on the screen for you.
Yep.
And my point is, not only have empathy, but we need to think about ethical media choices as Christians. Like, I hear Christians always fight about, I don't like the blood and sex and LGBTQ plus or whatever on screen, and we fight about that. But we don't think about us contributing to the great big media empires that are, it's just like people now realizing with their clothes or with the products that they use that, I'd like to put it this way: both indentured servitude and slavery is at the highest rate in this world that I think it's been ever. And we don't think about that because we go, well, we fought a civil war, got rid of slavery. Oh, no, we don't do that. Well, no, it's because it's economically driven now and it's out of sight, out of mind.
Yep.
Right. And I'm guilty of this too. I love watching my Netflix. Okay. But it takes tens of thousands of people to do what I'm consuming. And often in very bad cases and situations that I wouldn't put up with. So why should I expect it for somebody else just so I can have something to Netflix and chill with? Right. So
yeah.
I mean, this is just something if you're going to consume this media, you need to be intentionally thinking about what that costs, not just the Disney Plus subscription cost. I'm talking about what does it cost people? And I'm not saying, okay, now I should just forswear watching media. Okay, although it probably wouldn't hurt you to pick up a book every now and then or do something outside. But I'm just saying this is a call that if we're going to consume this, we need to be willing to pay a little bit more at the box office, to pay a little bit more in a subscription, right? To receive these services. And don't be like, I can't believe I have to pay an extra $2 a month. Okay, folks, that $2 a month seems extreme to you. Okay, it's less than the price you're paying for Starbucks or Caribou Coffee or whatever, East-West Coast divide, whatever. Caribou's better. Anyway, but whatever you pay is far less than these people that are sleeping 5 hours a night, working straight into their Friday nights, doing all sorts of other things to produce the content that you want to watch.
Yep.
So we need to think ethically. We need to be willing to sacrifice some for these people that are sacrificing a ton. And yes, as in anything, if we had time, could I talk about stuff on set that I knew was union dictated that I kind of rolled my eyes and laughed and like, really, that's dumb. But also in this particular case, having been on a set, again, not an expert, being limited, I can definitely see the arguments that are being made, particularly in this case. Okay, and I can't speak to the healthcare thing, so I'm going to set that aside because they're wanting better healthcare, less premiums. That sounds like everybody's complaint, and so I don't know how good they have it or don't because I didn't have to get on the healthcare plan, so I can't speak to that. But when it comes to turnarounds and work through lunches and work through evening sets on Fridays because they know they can't film Saturday and Sunday, so they work you almost to 11 p.m. on a Friday. There was one time we were on set almost to 1 a.m. on a Saturday morning, which kind of defeats the point. These turnarounds, these working conditions in that way, needing to have lunch, needing to have breaks, I totally see that from my personal, and I was on a great set. I just want to go out of the limb to say the staff was great. I didn't see any like huge cases of like intentional abuse or the director, the art director, the costume and designers that these people were great. I can only speak for that movie, but I have nothing bad to say about the people that worked on the 24th. Fantastic people. That being said, I can definitely see where, not by their own fault, but just by industry expectations and standards, where people could be burned out and hurt and not treated not even quite the way we would want. And they wanted to treat people well on that set. Great staff. So we just need to think ethically. We need to have empathy. And I'm fully, for what it's worth, not that my voice seems to matter in this discussion probably, but I'm fully for them dealing with lunch breaks and turnaround times. Those need to be fixed. And I've not even worked on these productions of like television series or really streaming series, which is where all the money's going to now. And I've heard those are even worse than film.
I believe
because film, they've kind of worked some of those kinks out, but this stuff, streaming services are all new and kind of in a gray zone.
And it's getting worse because they're coming out of the pandemic when everything was halted and they're trying to make up for lost time. It's a whole mess. So, well, thank you, Henry, and thank you for sharing your thoughts as well. I appreciate it. And to everyone, once again, sorry that this is a shorter episode, but let us know how you feel about it. And what we've thought about is cutting out less of the explanation and at the beginning of, briefing everyone on what's going on.
Cutting out more of the explanation.
Yeah, sorry, cutting out more of it or having less of it and then giving more time for us to get straight to the content. So if that's a shift that you like, let us know. And we're happy to go shorter if you feel like, if our listeners feel like that's a good direction to go. So you can either write us an email from the show notes, or you can leave us a comment if you're watching on YouTube. So with that, everyone, thank you so much for watching and for listening. We appreciate you, and we'll see you next time.